Good morning, Matt.
Yo, yo, how's it going?
Not too bad. Got 7.5 hours sleep. It's like a new record.
I Let me see. I got about 7, which is I don't want to call it a record, but it's pretty good. I went to bed at 10 last night.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess it is earlier for you whenever we do these. So
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
I went to bed 2 hours later,
Like at my
midnight.
at my midnight or at your midnight.
Oh, I guess I went to bed an hour earlier in
Yeah.
in temporal normal time.
Yes, an actual what is there a word for it? Temporal time? Is that,
I don't know. We need like the proper standardized Star Trek time or something.
yeah, really. Star dates. The
Yeah,
what is it? Uh, the meridian time or whatever.
you're already more ahead of the game than me. I'm on board with that word.
Sure. Well, what is it? The Greenwich.
Yeah, there's the Greenwich Meridian, which
Yeah.
is the base for Earth.
Yeah.
Well, well, I mean, I guess technically the international dateline is the base, isn't it?
Well, I
'Cause
mean,
that's
the date line's a date line, but then the time zone is the zone that's adjacent
every,
to it. I think.
everyone does like plus and zero
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
Greenwich, but it seems like
Uh,
it'd make more sense to just add from the international date.
I don't know. I just noticed Wikipedia uses that, and I was like, okay, that's for once one site that's not just like whatever San Francisco time or something.
I remember reading. I'm looking it up. I can't remember which state it is. I watched something one time explaining like how many different times there are or
Mm,
time zones.
mm.
Um, I guess Arizona, for all the people who are geographically inclined towards America and know where that is. There's a place called Arizona. For those who don't, um,
Hey, they helped take down Trump. I think they're somewhat globally known now.
okay. They've got two time zones, um, and it's not as straightforward as you might assume. Where you travel just from one into the other.
It's like
Um,
city based or something.
yeah, there's like so the majority of the state doesn't use daylight savings, but then a
Uh,
small portion of it does. So you have like you can be driving from New Mexico in a line west, and then you'll have the same time zone as New Mexico, and then it changes, and then it changes again, and then it changes again, and then it changes again, and then it changes again.
I just looked up the map. Yeah,
It's
yeah, that's dumb.
it's two time zones, but it's like this weird little bullseye type pattern.
It's funny when you talk to a lot of people from different countries. I mean, the majority of countries fit into a time zone, right? And so, like, if you're from the US or Canada, one of the things that people kind of marvel at a little sometimes is like your country spans so many time zones, right? Like, that's
Yeah,
actually quite uncommon,
yeah,
especially Canada with the
Newfoundland.
Atlantic, yeah, and Newfoundland time. So that's like what 6 time zones.
Yeah.
Um,
We're
yeah,
we're we're pretty straightforward about it, but yeah, it even in Canada, it's I don't know for some reason Saskatchewan I think doesn't use daylight savings, so we've got family over there. So whenever we're contacting them, it's either like a 2 hour or 1 hour time difference.
yeah, that's really weird. I I don't know. Daylight times, was it daylight savings time is
Hmm.
just a weird concept to me to begin with.
Yeah,
I guess. I
yeah,
mean, I get it, but you're changing the time for that. It's just
yeah.
kind of weird to me. Instead of changing, I don't know, habits or like just seasonally, like I don't know, it's just kind of weird. But I mean,
Yeah,
I find it interesting that like say China is one time zone, but
yeah,
it's this rather wide country
yeah.
looking east to west. So I mean, I don't know.
Business hours at 9 a.m.
Yeah, yeah.
That could be like pitch black or not.
Hmm. I mean, I assume. Uh, yeah.
That would be that'd be better. I feel like that would make sense for everyone to just have the same clock, but I guess that's exactly how it would happen. And some people would be like crying that they have to wake up when it's dark, and I don't know. It's easier to just be like us and just almost never sleep.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty much, pretty much,
Problem solved.
pretty much. Well, like I said, I went to bed at 10, which
Yeah.
so I I have a kind of a bad caffeine addiction, I guess, even though it's like I don't know, it like messes up my stomach, and so
Hmm.
like my my I've been trying to cut caffeine for a long time, but cut
Hmm.
caffeine just means like one or two coffees every day. And I don't know. I think even that is enough to just like wreck my sleep patterns. So I went completely
Hmm.
caffeine free yesterday, which should be no big deal for anybody. Like, who cares? But I mean, wow. By 10, I was just exhausted and I just went to bed. It was awesome.
Well, I
Um,
mean, that's the thing with coffee addictions, right? Like most people are like, "Oh, I need my coffee. I'm not awake in the morning." But like, isn't that because they're addicted to caffeine and they
yeah, probably.
like I work in games right now. I don't think it's as bad in games, but in film, like everyone was always on my case because I don't drink coffee, and they're like, how do you function, man? How do you stay awake?" And it's just like, I don't know. I just do, and it's like that whole feeling like you need your coffee is because you have it in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Yep. Um, It's like, and like anything, right? Cigarettes, any sort of
Yeah.
addiction. But yeah, I didn't drink coffee for years, years and years and years. I probably didn't start till I was like 30.
Hmm.
And it's so weird. Like, I don't even, I think, yeah, I think I joined a company and they had a coffee machine, and it was like a thing to go to the coffee room and get a coffee and like chat with your coworkers. And so you would miss a lot if you kind of didn't do that. It's just
Hmm.
one of those things, right? And so, like, I mean, I think someone, uh, like if I had actively wanted to resist drinking coffee, I could have, but it was kind of just like, well, it's there. It's
Hmm.
gross. I'm just going to pour so much milk into it I can handle it, but whatever. And then that's it. It's like your entry point, I guess.
I think that's part of the charm of the places I worked is that we had. I'm going to assume the coffee was just trash from the machine, or maybe it was just that like most of the workers that I was interacting with were European, so that they were more used to like espresso based drinks and stuff instead of the drip coffee.
Uh-huh.
So nobody ever wanted to use the coffee machines at work. They all wanted to walk out to the local cafe. So even though I didn't drink coffee, I would go for the walk and have the conversation there and just not order anything and have the conversation on the way back. So I never felt like I was missing out by not spending money.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
a
hang
nicer
on,
story.
hang on. I've got an interruption coming in here.
Okay.
2 hours later.
Sorry, that's the life of having a munchkin around.
Offspring.
Yeah.
Yep. See, this is part of my strategy of getting up early to do these. Is it's like the only time that there aren't kids screaming all day,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it's
There's
it's kind of nice because it's a forcing function to get me up, and then it's like peace and quiet. Wow.
there's a noticeable difference in your energy level. So when we do it later in the day, I don't need to speed up our podcast afterwards.
No, I feel it too. If I'm, this is like waking me up. Probably by the end of the podcast, I'm at a stage where I should be actually able to do a podcast. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, do you miss the coffee machines at work?
You know, I mean, I work for so the company I work for has well stocked mini kitchens, somewhat famously so, and so more so that than the coffee, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I don't know. I don't know. I was thinking about this recently, actually. I save so much time not commuting
Yeah.
that, like, I mean, I it was kind of a thing before the pandemic that there was like starting to be more and more remote work options for tech workers, and
Hmm.
you would see these postings online. It's like job postings for remote only companies, and then anyone who was specifically interested in that would, of course, go and like get excited about that. But of course, amongst the big tech companies, it was not a thing, right? Like people would maybe superstar employees would negotiate one-off kind of deals with companies to be able to work
Hmm.
remotely. Excuse me, here and there, but like for the average employee, that wasn't really generally an option.
Hmm.
And so like people would always get excited when they'd see these posts come up, and they'd like list out companies that were doing this. Um, and so when the pandemic started, and we all kind of got forced into this situation. I don't know. It's the first time like I hadn't really considered remote work just because the option wasn't open to me. But now that
Hmm.
we're all forced to do it, and I've gotten used to it. I guess like I like now we're talking about going back to the office, and so we have to make the call if we want to be remote or not, right? And this is
Mhm.
what I'm thinking about. It's like, do I miss that? Do I miss like the work environment? What is it?
Mhm.
I think I'm giving away a super serious answer here. I think um, the time savings from not commuting is so significant that like overrules everything else for me. Honestly,
It makes up for not having the good office coffee.
no coffee. And if I'm totally honest, I would love to like go in once a week.
Yeah.
You can get your office coffee, get your camaraderie, all that,
Yeah.
and then be remote
Get
the rest of the time. And
get
it's funny
get
because,
your get
yeah,
your Smash Bros gaming in.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you called it. Just line the day up with whoever else you need to be there, right? If they're doing the
Yeah.
same thing. Um, but yeah, it's interesting because you have this option to be remote even though you're not really remote, right? Like you
Mhm.
live basically commuting distance to the office, but
Yeah.
you're a remote employee.
Yeah.
And it's basically just like if you ever need to go in, presumably you could, right? Like there's some emergency all hands on deck or something. I don't know. Like you're just in commuting distance, but just
Mhm.
as a daily thing, you just don't go in. And I don't know. What's your door to door? Like for me, I don't know. I include everything I need to do to get to work. So like you wake up, you maybe get dressed. Like I don't need to do that anymore. Right?
Yeah.
Like all those little things, and then
Yeah.
you you obviously have the commute and so forth. Like my commute, I used to live really far away, but I live fairly close now.
Yeah.
And the commute itself might be 25 minutes, but all the little time around it,
Yeah.
no matter what, it comes up to like an hour, right? And
Yeah.
then you include the half hour coming back, and so like that very very valuable extra hour of the day is not worth it for coffee.
Mhm.
And since I'm trying to cut coffee, it's almost like an easy way to cut uh, some. Um, I I'm kind of lying here, since I
Maybe
can just get
maybe
coffee at home.
maybe maybe you're gonna go through this effort of quitting, and then the office phase is gonna kick back in, and you're gonna be right back to square one, where you feel like you need the office coffee again.
We'll see, unless I go remote.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's. I mean, I'm definitely feeling that. It's been interesting for me conceptually because I think I'm kind of in the same boat. I never really considered remote work. Like
Hmm.
I've moved from Toronto to Australia to Vancouver to like San Francisco and Glasgow and back into Montreal, and it's like I don't think it ever even occurred to me for any of those positions to ask to work remotely.
Hmm.
Like it was just a given. Like of course I need to be in the office.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe the difference is now that I'm in games, it feels more doable. When I was in film, it's every profession is going to have their niche reasons. Like if you're working at Shoppers Drug Mart, it's a little bit more difficult to work remotely, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think to an extent that felt true with film too. We've got these massive render farms at every facility that do for me in visual effects simulations, or
Hmm.
for everyone else the final rendered images that get played back when you're watching the film, and just the sheer amount of data that you have to send back and forth between your computer to one of
Mm,
these, like it
yeah.
really helps to be directly wired into that, as opposed to like having to rely on the speed of light and your internet connectivity to send it across the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it becomes an issue of like, if every frame of animation you're rendering takes, let's be nice here and say only 5 minutes to
Hmm.
render.
Hmm.
Like you've got a choice if you're doing 100 times that at home on your personal computer, or sending it to a machine and letting that all take care of it, and then downloading the JPEGs or whatever to view it afterwards. And
Hmm.
it it never felt like a reasonable option. I think I haven't experienced what exactly these facilities are doing now because I got out of film, but the impression that I have is everyone's now working remotely by like remote desktop accessing their machines at work.
I
So
figured
there's,
you would, yeah, or do it like some sort of server based
I mean, I
cloud
can't.
workflow.
I feel like to an extent that would work with visual effects, but I feel like for someone who's doing character animation, it would just be so incredibly obnoxiously frustrating to be working with like a 200 millisecond delay from when you like move your mouse and like your posing a character into a pose. Like I feel like you would constantly be like overshooting the pose that you're trying to put the character into and having to correct.
I don't know how much of the software. I don't know. Like we have like basically options where it's like all the software is, it's not remote desktop. It's like
Mm-hmm.
local, but then it's accessing like data on a server directly.
Yeah.
Which I mean, there's still of course the little delays, but like what you like I think it would account for that kind of thing. It's just like the actual updating on the back end of like what data is doing what would be delayed. There's
Mm-hmm.
probably some solution because, like you say, I think for that kind of sensitive work,
Yeah.
there's just no way that people are doing that.
Yeah. Because I mean, there's a big difference between like typing some code and seeing it come in, and I don't know, maybe noticing you've got a typo and having to go back and correct it or something, versus like trying to do artwork. I think like I don't know when the last time was you painted something in Photoshop, but when there's like a big delay between when you press the button and a line appears, it's like for me it makes it feel impossible to work.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If there's no delay because it's all local, and it's just
Yeah.
like the render farm is necessary to like crunch the data, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know. I pity anyone that is like has their workflow ruined by this.
But yeah, it's weird because I'm seeing all the people at the different film facilities doing that. So obviously they're accounting for that workflow somehow.
Hmm.
And like you said, it's weird to be in this position where we're now remote workers but working locally. like I
Yeah.
live 3 kilometers from my current office, right? So
Hmm.
I've had to go in once during the pandemic.
Was
Um,
that to pick stuff up or to like spend a day
No, I had
doing
to pick
something?
stuff up. So, I mean, one thing that is weird. I mean, every facility is going to be different. I never questioned whether we should be doing it differently or not because we're at an indie facility.
Mm.
But I opted to just use my own personal computer for work.
So it was at the company.
No, it's here at home. Like I had a machine at work, but then I used my own
Oh,
personal
I see.
machine
I
at
see.
home.
I see. I see.
And at one point during this pandemic, my video card kicked the bucket.
So you had to go get the work
So
computer.
I had to borrow a video card from work, yeah, because you can't like buy them anymore.
Hmm.
It's like I either
Yeah.
wait an unknown period of time before I can even possibly order one.
Man.
So yeah, that was the one time I've gone into the office, and yeah, it's you're right. Like just the amount of time that you save, not getting dressed and not showering and all that stuff every single time you have to leave the house is it makes a difference.
It's an
For,
enormous difference.
for me, it's like a half-hour walk,
Hmm.
um, which it's been a double-edged sword, I guess,
I was
not
just about
having
to
that.
say, I almost think that would be pleasant. Like my commute has never been a walk. It's always
Yeah,
been like a short bus or something, but it's not been something that I could ever use for exercise, except for like
yeah.
university days, I guess. But yeah, since getting a job, um, yeah.
Well, I
So for
mean,
you, that's got to be a kick
it's
in the exercise.
yeah. I mean, it's brutal because it's been pretty much my exercise routine has been removed, and I
Mhm.
haven't uh, replaced it with a different exercise routine. So I mean, I haven't weighed myself in a little while, but the last time I weighed myself, I was the heaviest I'd ever been.
Okay.
So I've either surpassed that or I'm not much below it. Um, and that's not good. I got to do something about that. Like
That.
that's the biggest drawback from not being in the office is I don't
Mhm.
walk 6 kilometers a day.
Yeah, I guess that's like a common COVID story. I found when the pandemic started, that kind of happened to me a little bit. Um, like I mean, we're still careful, but like we were like super careful at first.
Mhm.
Like we would not go to grocery stores. We would order only off of the Amazon grocery thing. What's it
Mhm.
called? Amazon. What's it called?
I don't
The
know.
Fresh, I
Primal
think.
eats. I don't
Yeah,
know.
whatever. Amazon Fresh. And then when the food came, we would like disinfect every package, like just like crazy. So anyway, um, that affected my buying habits because certain foods, I don't know, you buy like a bag of spinach and the bag is hard to clean. Like it's a pain in the ass, right? And so I kept
Yeah.
buying Pop Tarts because the box would come and I would carefully open it, dump out the packaged Pop Tarts inside and throw the box out or like recycle the box. They're done, right? Like no wiping. And so
Right.
it like eating well became an enormous time burden. So
Yeah.
I was like living off Pop-Tarts for like a month and a half, and it was just, yeah. I'm glad I kicked that habit.
I wonder if that's like a trend for the company, if they've noticed like an uptick in Pop Tart sales or something.
I just from me maybe like Pop Tarts. I was having like 4 or 5 a day, or more, 4 or 5 packages. I guess I don't know. Yeah,
That's what I did in college.
I see. I've
I
never done that.
yeah, I was pretty poor in college, so I guess it was largely the like I didn't have a vehicle. The grocery store, there was a tiny, tiny grocery store right at the bottom of where I lived, so I could go to that for some necessities. But if I wanted affordable prices, which was kind of important to me, being
Mhm,
poor, I
mhm.
had to go to the grocery store, and there was a free bus that would leave from the college that would take us there. But you know, the amount of time it takes you to go there and come back, it's like I didn't want to get fresh produce and meats and
Yeah.
stuff. I would stock up on like family size boxes of Pop Tarts and.
Yeah. Yep. That sucks. That sucks.
I'm pretty sure my skin was turning gray at one point in college. From
I don't
well,
remember eating terribly in college. I think I actually ate okay. I would eat boring foods like like whole grain bread with just like a whole bunch of like alfalfa
yeah,
in it, and it was like people would look at me like, you're not even gonna put meat or mayonnaise or something, but like it was reasonably cheap and reasonably okay healthy. You know what I mean? Like as long
yeah,
as I stuck to pure ingredients. So I don't know. I managed that somehow. It's kind of like, I don't know, afterwards, I guess. Like in when your job is kind of busy and you just don't have time to think about stuff. It's easy to say you don't have time. You don't have willpower, I guess, to like
yeah,
put extra effort into thinking about stuff. It's just easy to grab the Pop Tarts, grab the
yeah,
coffee, you're done.
yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Um, yeah, it's I can't at all remember what my train of thought was.
mm, Pandemics suck.
Yeah, it was it. So I mean, going back to the remote working thing, like
Mm,
that's something that I found interesting because uh, so coincidentally, just before the pandemic was starting, I was considering changing my job, right?
hmm
So I found a company in another country that was interested in hiring me, and so as part of the interview process, I booked some vacation time off
hmm
during Quebec's March break,
hmm
uh, and hopped on an airplane. And at the time, people were like, you know, is the airplane
uh,
a good idea? Like it sounds like there's this sickness that's starting to spread everywhere. Maybe you should be careful.
I might have been one of those people.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was in this other country for a week, and as I was in that other country, Google like released a or maybe not Google themselves, but someone released a map on a layer on Google that shows where the pandemic was spreading,
Hmm
and it went from like not being anywhere to like that country was like just a wash of red. uh, and it was pretty weird being there at the time because um, like nobody there was taking it seriously. Like
hmm hmm
they're all just like, oh man, I wonder when this is going to go away. Um, I hope nobody brings it into the office.
Yeah.
And then I flew back, and the next day the border was closed.
Wow, man. So if you had flown
So,
back later, what would have happened? You
uh,
have citizenship of that country. Maybe you could have gotten in, but
well,
others couldn't.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't the border for Canada that was
Oh,
closed. It was closed at the other place. So
oh,
I might have been able to leave, but I can't remember if the airplanes were still flying or if they just like shut down the airport or what. But yeah, I
right.
mean, it's definitely a weird situation. So then I think I came back. Like this was still early March, and I think it was like Canada still wasn't taking it overly serious.
Yeah.
I think it was like the following week they announced that like if you've been traveling, you should stay home for a few days and see how it goes.
hmm
And then it was like a couple days after that, they're like, okay, now our borders are closed and nobody's allowed to go into their offices.
Yeah. I think
Schools are closing, and
get ready to have your entire life upended.
yeah,
It was I guess I was more of the serious party, and it impressed me how many countries were just la di da about it.
Yeah.
And I get like, it's easy for me to sit at home and be like, oh man, we should be more careful. Whereas like a government has to worry about its, economy and not overstepping its whatever, like overzealous execution of its power or whatever, right? But I don't know, like it just felt like the country just kind of waited until the pandemic exploded, and it's like, okay, well now we're screwed, so let's close everything.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I don't know. It's the first big pandemic, I guess, certainly in our lifetime, and so I think it's
Yeah.
like it's going to be a guiding thing for like if there's ever, presumably there will be future, whatever instances of pandemics and such. So
Yeah.
hopefully they'll act faster. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
Who
It
knows?
was it was weird for me being at the airport at that time because it
I'll
was
bet
like
it was.
most people were still very blasé about it all, and it's like
Mhm.
I remember seeing like I remember some people advising me ahead of time. They're like, you should wear a mask,
Mhm.
and there was like a lot of I don't know, misinformation, or like up until that point, North America was basically like, you're wearing a medical mask? That is stupid. Like, you are dumb if you do this. Why would you do that? It doesn't even protect you. It only protects other people when you're the one who's sick.
Yeah.
So I went to the airport, and there was maybe 3 or 4 people in the Montreal airport, which is a fairly big one,
Mhm.
wearing a mask. And I remember thinking, oh man, I wonder if they are sick.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then followed by a year and a half of wearing a mask every single time I go outside.
You remind me. Um, Obviously, family has Asian roots, or
Yeah,
now my extended family does, and so like the mask thing was like, we were doing it before it was cool. But anyway,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, that used to be. Maybe that's what you're getting at. That used to be a thing that like Asian people got a hard time if they
Yeah,
were
I know, I
wearing a
know.
mask.
Well, we what we used to do, like if so I get sick a lot. I haven't actually been sick very much recently. I guess when you never go outside anymore because of the
Coincidence.
pandemic. Yeah, right. But I would always be getting sick, and we had like a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and if it spread to them, it was just hell at home to have
Hmm.
two sick kids that are tiny and screaming all night. And
Hmm.
so at home, actually, I would, if I was sick, I would put the mask on unless I'm like hiding in my room or something, so that they wouldn't get sick, or it would be less likely they'd get sick, hopefully, right?
Hmm.
And like I just kind of forget about it and go outside, and people would be like, "What? Like this guy stepped out of a biohazard unit or something?" Like people would be like, literally, they'd come up to like people have come up to me and like,
Your
"Excuse me."
homeowners association.
Yeah, they're like, "Why are you wearing a mask? Like, what's going on?" Right? Like I don't know. Like I think that the insinuation was like, if you're sick, get the hell out of here, right? Or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Um, but now it's, yeah, like you say, it's funny that it's. I mean, here we are, right?
yeah.
Yeah, it was weird when the pandemic started, because I remember we had just gotten in a car accident, and
Hmm.
so I was kind of like, and like there was news about this new thing spreading, and oh, blah blah blah, and it's in China now, and whatever, and we were kind of like at home recovering, and I don't know, I have kind of a weird medical history where it's like,
Hmm.
I don't have like some solid diagnosis, but there's all this like thoughts that I might be immunocompromised and blah 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 blah. And so I can't like if I need something specifically for immunocompromised people, I don't really have any proof of that. But then
Hmm.
like I generally just follow guidance as though that's the case. So
Yeah.
when the CDC or someone says, "Oh, if you're immunocompromised, you should go do this or be careful of this," so when the pandemic started, that's kind of why I was like super scared all the time. I was like, oh man,
Hmm.
I have to be super careful. And so our company started by giving us the option, like if you're especially worried about this, you
Hmm.
can work from home. And so I actually took that option. So I've probably been working from home maybe a week longer than everyone else before it
Hmm.
got forced. The other thing that happened is I think it was just before the car accident. Yeah, I was in London for a business trip, and someone in the office had COVID, and so they sent out like the notification saying you were in the same office, blah 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 blah. Blah. And it's just weird now because like of course an office of several hundreds of people just going in and out every day normally,
Hmm.
like yeah, there's going to be significant COVID presence there, but at the time it was like you were in a giant building and someone there had COVID. Warning, warning, right?
Yeah, I mean it's weird too because like I've worked in places that didn't give paid sick days,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm one of those vindictive people, I guess, where if I get sick and I'm not going to get paid to take time off, I'm basically going to say F you, and I'm going to show up to work and almost hope to spread my illness and just bring the company to a halt.
Sacrifice the workers.
Yeah, it's like hit you where you're hit you where it hurts in the pocketbook. I don't remember the more elegant phrasing of that,
Sure.
uh, but yeah, it's like I imagine I'm not the only person in the world that has an attitude like that. I imagine that like if you continue to allow workers into an office during a pandemic, like it's gonna spread.
Hmm. Which we saw. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's funny is there's a now we're at the point where like it's contentious, I guess, for some people whether or not they should be forced to have a vaccine.
I was
Um,
just about to say, it's crazy how political this whole pandemic has been. And you can see the contrast in, like, say, Asia, where,
yeah,
I mean, of course, there's exceptions and there's people who have whatever opinion everywhere, but like generally society's kind of galvanized behind the effort. Don't really
yeah,
question experts needlessly or whatever, right? And like,
yeah,
I don't know, here people almost start from that. Like,
yeah,
let's start by questioning everything, which skepticism in general is good. I
yeah,
don't know, some of the almost like needless, like skepticism for the sake of skepticism. Like, I just want to be that person that's saying, nah, I don't think so,
yeah.
without actually looking at any facts or anything. I don't know. It's just
Well,
been a really weird period, experiencing a lot of that.
well, to be fair, I think it was like grade 12, my global history class is probably the first time a teacher introduced the topic to me of figuring out whether or not the sources for your research are credible.
Hmm.
And I feel like there's a pretty good chance that a lot of people made it through high school and never had that conversation with a teacher.
Hmm.
And I, th- I guess, even a topic such as that seems pretty common sense. It's understandable that if nobody does ever talk to you about, make sure the sources of your news are credible, it's easy to just buy into whatever attitude you're biased towards in the first place.
Hmm.
So I don't know, like this information that I was getting about, like, oh yeah, you don't need to wear a mask. Like that was total, just like I didn't research whether or not to believe that. I just bought into it, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't know. It's definitely weird though. Like there's people, we've got a vaccine passport now in Canada.
Hmm.
Well, I say Canada. We have it in Quebec. I don't know about the other provinces.
Hmm.
And it's like you can't eat in at a restaurant, or you can't go to I don't need like a gym or something now unless you can prove that you've been vaccinated. And
Hmm.
this is just such a thing for some people that they're so offended that they have
Yep.
to inject themselves with microchips.
just to go to the gym.
Yeah,
Freedom, man.
it's so that I know that there was at least one business who they make canoes in Ontario, and they put a job posting that they will only hire people who are unvaccinated.
Speaking
I
of galvanizing behind the effort,
I'm curious how one proves that they haven't been vaccinated.
right?
Like, do they just write on a sheet of paper not vaccinated? Like,
You could secretly be vaccinated and go to this company
yeah,
and like be a mole for the other
yeah,
side. Well, I would make some joke about how this is America and that would never fly, and freedom. But they actually just passed or like announced that there's a mandate coming in about a month or so, where that's going to be the case here as well. Believe it or not. And as you can imagine, I'm sure the uproar is similar, if not worse, than what you've seen in Quebec. You definitely get a lot of unhappy people. But yeah, as of, I think it's October 12th, 20, I don't know, sometime in October, you're going to need to prove that you were vaccinated. I don't think you need that for restaurants, like just like across the board anywhere inside. I don't know. But I think like gyms and schools
Mm,
require it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember the news because it was from almost a month ago, and I certainly did not bookmark it. I remember
Mm.
seeing some sort of a thing saying that basically all of the Republican states have made it more difficult to declare a state of emergency so that the next time there's a pandemic, they won't be able to like restrict people from going to work.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, you've seen in Florida where they like spend political hours actively fighting against mask mandates in schools and stuff.
Yeah, the
So
it's
that's kind
odd.
of
It's odd. My kid, he's in an early enough grade that I don't. I think that if he were any earlier, then he wouldn't have to wear a mask. But I think when school was starting up, we were just telling him like, no matter what other kids are doing, you should be wearing
Mhm.
a mask. But I guess they do end up. They hand out a new mask to every student every single day,
Wow.
which to
Yeah,
me seems bananas.
that is
Um,
somewhat excessive.
it's like
That's
you're not whatever mask you bring from home that day, they make you switch it at the door when you're going in.
interesting. I've been to hospitals to do that,
Yeah,
but you don't go to the hospital every day,
yeah.
hopefully. Our school is very, very adamant about all of these things, the mask thing, the keeping them separate from each other thing.
Hmm.
Yeah, and like there's smaller classes and they rotate recesses and all kinds of stuff. Um, I don't know. I hope it's I hope it's effective. We actually had a minor COVID scare recently. I forget if I told you that.
No.
Yeah, so there's like a mother, um, there's like a parent group my wife goes to, and there's a mother who I guess I don't know the exact sequence of events. Her kid was sick, like sniffly, and then he tested positive. He or she actually, I don't know, tested positive for COVID,
Mm,
and so my wife had gone to the mother group, and it was just kind of like, well, it's probably okay, but you know, it's possible since we were in the same room, I guess, and whatever, blah blah. And so the mother went and got a COVID test, and of course, everyone else in the group was supposed to. So my wife went and got one. Then the mothers came back negative, and so it was kind of like, okay, hopefully that's okay. But what actually had happened, they did the rapid test for
hmm.
the sick child, and I guess it has a lot of false positives because then when they went and did the PCR test afterwards, they got that result that was negative. So it seems
Mm,
like there wasn't actually any COVID the whole time, but of course everyone's freaking out about it. So that was the closest thing to a COVID scare we've had.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, I guess I was just a little bit scared about it after my international trip at the very beginning. I was just
Right.
like,
Yeah.
it was still early enough that I didn't even know how to get a test or whatever. So I was
Yeah.
just like waiting the whole period, not in quarantine,
hmm
uh, wondering if I was going to exhibit any symptoms or anything.
Well, you guys also you traveled during the pandemic. Like you went to the East Coast as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, we were very um, much more careful at that point, like wearing masks and
Yeah.
sanitizing our hands and everything. And
Well, I imagine you were. I'm just curious actually about like you had to quarantine and go through all
Mhm.
that, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I'd kind of informed myself just by looking at the maps of the waves from I think the Spanish, um, what was it called, the
Spanish flu.
Spanish flu.
Yeah.
Um, so I'd kind of saw that there were waves associated with that, and part of what was the hardest about the pandemic for us was that we were, I don't know if in retrospect whether we were just overprotective or whatnot, but our kid was young enough that he didn't have to by law go to school.
hmm
So we're like, all right, well, let's not send him to school. Let's keep our kid home throughout this pandemic. That'll go well. Um,
For you guys.
yeah. So two parents working remotely with a young child who's hyperactive and wants attention all day, like that.
Mm.
That wasn't exhausting at all. Um, uh, but we figured it's helpful in two ways because one, it reduces the number of people at the school,
hmm
so it makes it harder for stuff to spread, but also obviously it keeps our entire family safer too.
Yeah.
um so but that was absolutely brutal trying to look after him. Like I would wake up like super early, start my work day, and then basically take the whole work day to look after him, and then continue to catch up on my work day in the evening before going to sleep, and it was just like it was exhausting.
Man.
Um,
Yeah.
I beat a lot of video games this year. But,
Making up for it.
yeah. Well, I mean, like he and I played a lot of games
Oh, I
during the
see. Yeah.
pandemic together.
Yeah.
Like we played a lot of co-op games together,
Hmm.
which was great. Like in some ways, it was a good experience because we got to bond a lot more than we do now. Like now, I take him to school because he legally has to.
Hmm.
Thanks, government.
Yeah.
Um, so he's there all day, and we pick him up, and we basically have dinner, and then we put him to bed. So it's like not a whole lot of quality time with each other throughout the week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but anyway, yeah, we saw the waves, and we were having such a hard time with him that we're like, okay, my parents in the middle of nowhere have a lot of space, and we could really use someone to help distract our kid, and there's no pandemic basically because it's the middle of nowhere, so let's go. And I don't know how long we're going to go, but let's just do it. So as there was a lull in the waves, we rented a car and drove, and had to go into isolation for the first 2 weeks that we were there.
Hmm.
um,
Fun.
and then we stayed there for 4 months. And by that point, I think we remembered why I moved out after high school. And there was another lull in the pandemic, so we're like, okay, well, now's a perfect time to go back. Because I mean, honestly, we left our heating on in our apartment because you can't just leave
The
a
pipes
plate.
freeze and
Yeah,
stuff, right?
you can't let the pipes freeze in Canadian winter. So
Hmm.
as we were heading into spring, you can't leave the heat on all spring either.
Hmm.
So as there was a lull, we came back, and Quebec, there was no such restriction. We didn't have to go into isolation as soon as we came back. Um, we did anyway because by that point we were a little bit more uh, caring
Hmm.
about society. Uh, but yeah, we've ordered our groceries almost exclusively since coming back. Like every
Wow.
now
Yeah.
and then we'll go into one of the smaller local shops that doesn't do delivery because
Hmm.
we're trying to stimulate the local economy a little bit. But there's also way less traffic. Like if you consider like um, I don't know what the big stores are, like a Kroger's or something. Is that the
Hmm.
big American chains? Like
Not around here, but QFC,
right, I never heard of
Safeway,
them.
Safeway.
Yeah, Safeway I've heard of. Okay, but
Yeah.
like yeah, if you've ever gone into a Safeway, there's way more people there than in the little local grocery
Yeah.
shops.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I find like we lived across from one of those little grocery shops, and they're cool, but they tend to skew. I mean, I guess politically, they're kind of like the
mhm.
anti-mask, just come in, everybody types. Generally,
Okay.
as far as I can tell around here, that's what I've seen. And so that's fine for those people, I guess. But we kind of like that option wasn't like super appealing for us, at least
Mm.
in the ones we knew of.
The ones we had, they like had bags of uh, gloves and
Oh
hand
yeah,
sanitizer
wow.
and masks and stuff right next to the entrance. So um, you were able to take that stuff if you wanted before any such mandates came into effect.
Hmm.
Eventually, Montreal at least made it mandatory that you have to wear a mask when you're in stores like that.
Yeah.
I remember just being completely floored, and I guess I had that switch in mentality where I went from not taking it seriously myself to like feeling as though I'm the one doing everything right and nobody else is doing stuff as well as me.
Yeah, I felt that from like day one. I mean, that sounds maybe like an obnoxious attitude to take
Yeah,
when phrased that way, but like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like certainly the people around me were not being nearly as careful. Like I remember, and this goes back to like being worried about being immunocompromised and
Hmm.
whatever, and so like I was like especially mega careful in those early months. Not that I have not done that so much, but just like I guess like actively at night worrying about it level of concern has kind of died down since we've
Yeah,
gotten used to this life.
yeah, probably. You know, when I guess it was like November last year is when I made my trip to my parents, and at that point I was still I was like extra vigilant. Like
Hmm.
I was kind of taking it seriously in Montreal, like ordering groceries and washing groceries and always wearing the mask and stuff. And then we did the like 2 day road trip, and it's
Hmm.
suddenly like, okay, every single time I touch the gas nozzles or anything, I have to be making sure I'm sterilizing my hands and stuff afterwards, because it's like I'm traveling.
Hmm.
I'm in contact with a ton of other people that are traveling. This is how it spreads.
Hmm.
And then I show up in Prince Edward in Prince Edward Island, and the pandemic is basically non-existent there. So nobody there is like they're still all having big family get-togethers and everything. And I was
Yeah.
just like my parents would
Step
wear
into
their
another world.
well, it's like my parents would wear their shoes in the house, and I'm just like,
Oh, people still do that.
apparently they never did that the whole time I was growing up. So that was just like, you know,
They're taking it easier during the pandemic.
that was shocking for me seeing them do that. But then I'm just like, because there's a pandemic, I was like, what are you doing? We have a kid here who sits on the floor all day, and you're dragging stuff potentially all through the house. Like,
Yeah,
what are you
and
thinking?
pandemic or not, I don't know. I kind of that's always been a weird one for me, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So I became like probably over the top vigilant there. Like, I have family who still insists on going to church and stuff during the pandemic, and I was just like, you guys are crazy. I want no contact with you at all because you are. If there's going to be any spread, it's going to be through you, which
Yeah.
which is which was bananas because there were literally zero cases on the entirety of the province at that point.
How's it been since, actually?
They're at the worst they've ever been right now. I think
Mm.
they had something like 18 cases last week.
There's like
Uh,
18 cases on any given block here, probably
yeah,
daily.
yeah. Like there's been more cases in my neighborhood here in Montreal than there have been through the entirety of the pandemic in Prince Edward
Yeah.
Island. So it was weird because I definitely felt like I was overreacting while I was there.
Yeah.
They've had a total of 294 cases on the island.
Yeah. Well, I
Um,
mean,
but
yeah.
for I mean, going from like the Canadian epicenter to somewhere else, it felt like I needed to be cautious. And then I don't know, when I came back, I have kind of relaxed. I almost never look at the news or whatever. I'm just like, okay, well, we're in this and it's going to go until it's going to go. So I'm just going to keep up my good habits and not stress about it.
I've basically taken the same attitude. Um, I think, I think like when there's some life change or something, like my kid's starting school again, it was like, okay, well, let's look over what we need to do if there's ever any COVID
Hmm.
scare. Let's think about protocols again, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
That kind of thing. But
Yep.
outside of that, yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't know. Like actively worrying about it is not going to accomplish anything, right?
Yeah.
And so I've been pretty. I've just kind of made do with it. I mean, we moved during the pandemic, which was crazy too.
Hmm.
But uh, where we were living when the pandemic started was like kind of a more densely populated area, I guess.
Hmm.
And we moved to an area that's more like. I mean, it's interesting because it's. I guess it's like I compare it to downtown Vancouver. So in a sense, it's densely populated, but like you have these wide streets, and you can kind
Hmm.
of easily avoid people outside. And I think it's kind of an area that's a little more I don't know left leaning, if you will. And so like it's just easier out here to like kind of feel reassured. Whereas where I was living, it's like these tight, tiny street corners. People would be jogging past you, of course, no mask or anything all the time,
Hmm.
and that was awful. So I mean, I don't know. Things have gotten better, which has been nice. Have you? I guess I'm curious if you've like I'm trying to think of like do you have any coping mechanisms or like what are you doing in the pandemic to make things better for you?
I mean, in some ways, nothing different.
Yeah, well, that's good if you haven't felt the need.
I've always enjoyed Netflix and video games. So now that's basically it. I'm doing fewer things. I haven't gone to a movie theater.
Yeah, yeah.
We never eat out at restaurants. It's been harder with the kid because he's really active and he has this habit that he's formed that I guess is normal, but he sniffs his hands a lot.
Sniffs his hands. Interesting.
Like I don't know, lots of kids will like suck on a thumb
Yeah,
or
yeah,
they have
yeah.
some sort of little
Thing.
thing that they do to comfort themselves, and everyone grows out of it, or most people grow out of it. Um, but if for whatever reason he sniffs his hands, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not taking you to a park as long as you're sniffing your hands because this is suicide. Like, uh, so we've done a lot more stuff like crafting with perler beads and
Mm.
drawing and baking stuff that you can do in the house. We
Yeah.
played a lot of video games.
Yeah. It
Uh,
sounds kind of
it's
nice, actually.
well, it's weird because I've always had social anxiety,
Mm,
um, and it's always been a stressful thing for me going to movie theaters and stuff, and I've never really understood it that well until more recent years, where I'm kind of able to identify that it's a recurring pattern.
hmm
Um, so it's in some ways been really nice for me not having to go and socialize with people.
That's
Be-
interesting.
but
Yeah.
but in other ways, I have like noticed that when I do, it feels even more awkward than it used to. So
Mm,
I'm like acknowledging that, like, you know, I need to get back into the habit of feeling comfortable around people again. Like I'm looking forward to going back to doing some rock climbing at a gym or something.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I probably, like the way you describe it, I don't have that level of social anxiety, but I have a little bit of that, I would say. And so it's it's comforting to stay at home in a way, but I've always enjoyed the hobbies I do, but I enjoy doing them socially.
Hmm.
So like I enjoy getting a bunch of people in a room and playing certain video games that are very kind of like social in nature, and
Hmm.
like I enjoy watching Netflix with people. So like for your two examples there, but like that I guess has been the biggest effect for me. Has been like I do a lot of the same things, but I don't know. I kind of miss the social aspect actually,
Mm.
um, which is a bummer.
I'm weird in that, you know, this particular episode, I didn't have any notes or anything of what we were going to talk about. Um, so I'm good at being spontaneous with certain activities, and yet I hate not planning things at the same time.
Hmm
um like the fact that we do this on kind of a regular basis makes this like a really fun experience for me, whereas like if people invited me to a party or something and they're like, oh, by the way, tomorrow I'm having a get together, why don't you come? I'm just like, whoa, 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 whoa. I need more than a day's notice to mentally prepare for this.
Oh, I'm so totally like that. I'm so totally like that. Anything that like messes up my routine, it needs to be
Yeah.
way ahead, or I'm like sweating about it.
And it's like my routine is nothing, right? It's like
Yeah,
my like my plan would be like, okay, I was gonna play a little bit of Mario Brothers or
yeah.
something.
Well, that's it, right? It's like you can go, but you just need to mentally account for that. I guess for
Yeah.
me, yeah, I always like I'm the same, but I would still like I planned out my next day at the very least, and it was always
Hmm.
dumb things like I'm gonna whatever like study this for an hour and play this game for an hour. But
Yeah.
like from in my mind, it was so set in stone that that's what I was gonna do. That any like if someone for someone to come and flip that over was like yeah, just this weird uh, jarring thing, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what it was like for me, like where I say I have kind of social anxiety and stuff. It's like
Mm.
I feel like largely it was that component that bothered me in the past, but I realized that like I was never a fan of going to like the school dances
hmm
or holiday office parties and stuff. Like there's something about being in large groups of people and having to socialize. Like my hearing isn't particularly good, so I feel like I can never hear people properly, and then I get distracted by like basically trying to take in every conversation around me instead of just the one that I'm supposed to be paying attention to. That it's like I don't know. I have always had difficulty in those environments, and for some reason, you layer in the fact that like people are wearing their noses poking out of their masks and stuff in the grocery store. And now it's just like, I don't want to be here.
I'll just stay home. Yeah. Yep. I hear you. I hear that. I hear that.
But no, it's a I don't know. It's a very weird thing, like that. It just kind of all feels normal now, and I don't know. Like going way back to the company that had tried to hire me, it's like after the interview and all the borders are shutting down and everything, it's like it felt like everything had gone well and that maybe I would work there. But then the immediate response was like, well, we're gonna have to see how things go now because our borders are shut and we can't hire anyone.
Yeah.
To like a week or two later, they're like, we realize that all of us are now working remotely. We would be interested in hiring you to work remotely too. And uh, I mean, obviously, I made decisions not to go with that, but it's weird how people's sense
Yeah.
of what's normal can shift, and like that whole working remotely thing. Maybe that's going to be kind of normalized now, and people will get to do it.
I've always wondered. Yeah. I mean, they're talking about how like tech companies constantly talk about how it's normalized now, but I think like there's many jobs that are going to be much harder to do, right? And then
Hmm.
it's kind of one of those things. It's interesting too because it's like a good bad thing, right? Like you lose a little too, right? Like a good example,
Yeah.
I travel a lot for work,
Hmm.
which some people might hate, but for me it was a neat opportunity to go to places I probably wouldn't have gone, like Tel Aviv, or like
Yeah.
maybe I would have gone to London just for fun or something. I don't know, but like to go there regularly, you kind of get to know the town and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um,
It's kind of like for people like us who enjoy moving.
yeah,
That's kind of like the perk that when you no longer get to move keeps us sane.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah, it's going to be interesting when slash if the whole pandemic thing ever lifts. Just kind of like what the world will be like.
Yeah. Well, if we're not careful, this is going to end up being one of our longest podcasts.
All right.
We should wrap this up pretty soon. Have you had a chance to play anything recently?
I've been dabbling a lot. Like I haven't sat down to commit myself to any game, but
Hmm.
I've been kind of just playing really just like Sega games, just because I set up the Genesis for the first time in
Right.
so long. um, was just
There's
playing.
there's a real barrier to entry with consoles and stuff, right? It's like it's not
Yeah,
fun
it
to have to
sucks.
hook stuff up and find all the stuff just to play it, so
Yeah,
that
it sucks.
when it's there, it's enticing.
Totally. So we've been dabbling a little in that. We played a little more Mario Galaxy 2, just the special zones. I've just been. I keep telling the kids we're going to play Mario Odyssey, but I need to actually. Speaking of barrier to entry, I need to set up my Switch. So, like obviously we could play it handheld, but I'd rather. I think it'd be more fun for the kids to play it on the TV. So
Yeah,
need to take.
Mario Odyssey is not nearly as fun handheld.
Well, most I don't know about you. I've been playing virtually all my Switch playing has been just handheld, and so
Yeah.
like I was talking to our other colleague who was like, "I can't believe you do that!" Like for Mario Maker, like wow. And I actually have never played it on the TV. So
Hmm.
oh, I've actually been playing a little Mario Maker, which is not really noteworthy, I guess. Just again dabbling, playing some random levels.
I played the majority of it on the TV. I played through, I think, a lot of Breath of the Wild handheld, and I
Yeah,
played through all of Phoenix Wright handheld,
right.
which that was a handheld to begin with anyway. Like you're not missing out on anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a Mario Odyssey in particular uh, uses the motion controls of the Joy Cons a lot. So
Yeah. Important for sure. Yeah, I will uh, eventually set it up. Just dragging my heels. What about you?
I in 2015 backed a Kickstarter for a game called Wildfire,
Ah, yes. Yep.
and 6 years later, I finally played it and beat it and loved it. That's going on. It went on my list of favorite games of all time.
Cool.
So
Cool.
I highly recommend it. It's a pretty unique game, and I remember at the time, I think in like 2012 or 11 or something, playing like Mark of the Ninja, and there was like this idea of like, can stealth games be in 2D and be fun? But I feel like this is a stealth game that is really well done. It's 2D, and I highly recommend it.
It does sound up my alley.
Definitely for I'd be curious to know what you think of it. Like you and I and third person, we did a podcast with him way back in the day, Thomas.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
which that episode up until now has been our longest episode. But we had dabbled during the pandemic with a small little Nintendo game, and I feel like the what we had started with that would fit very perfectly, taking some of the features from this game.
Some inspiration. Cool. Well, I will look into it.
All right. Well, it
Cool.
sounds like that's the end of our episode.
All right. All right. Well, go hang out with your family.
Will do.
I'm going to contemplate either going back to bed or doing something here.
Cleaning some groceries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Mask shopping.
All right. Take it
All
easy.
right, man. Yeah. See ya.